your big toe. If you can wiggle your big toe, you'll be okay. And that's usually what helps me pull out of it. But that is the scariest thing. Oh,
it definitely is.
So anyways, it's Saturday night, which everyone knows what that means. It's another episode of Spilling Ink. We are the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and professionals in the publishing industry. Hey, Rebekah. And we've got a brand new author to introduce you to. And I love when we get to bring new to us and new to you authors on, because it gives us more perspective. It gives us another book to add to our TBR pile. And of course, who doesn't have a huge TBR pile as it is? Never wanting for things to read, always wanting for things to read, never having enough time for it, I think is the problem.
Yes, always.
Well, anyway, so before we jump right in, let's hear a word from our sponsor, and then Damien will give you the floor after that so you can tell us all about your awesome books.
Sounds good.
All right.
Hello, everybody. I am Joe Compton, and welcome to our channel, Go Indie Now. This is the place that celebrates indie artists and indie art, and we do so by producing several shows that either air on daily, weekly, monthly, or seasonal scheduling. And within those shows, we aim to educate and entertain you. If you're an indie artist who's trying to figure out how to do this, this is the place you need to be. If you're an indie artist who's looking to promote and doesn't have any avenues and is tired of the grind, this is the place to be. Because remember, it's always time to go indie now.
That's right. Always time to go indie now. And speaking of indies, new indie author, Damien, tell us about yourself.
Hi. So, thanks for having me on, Katie and others. So you've probably already heard my accent. I'm not one of the US authors. I'm over here in the UK. So it's currently just coming past 1 a.m. For me here. So if I start yawning or look sleepy, that's why. It's not that I'm bored. It's just very early Sunday morning for me. So don't really know what to tell you. So I'm the author of the Oakenfall Chronicles, a series of fantasy books that take generally the average man in the street, the Joe Nobody, and throws them into situations that they just shouldn't be exposed to normally, and it takes you through how they deal with it, leading through to the underlying darkness that's really leading to them all. There's a thread that goes through them all, but I won't go into too much about that now.
So what age group are your books targeted at?
So they're quite dark in places. They're probably more adult than, I always describe them as kind of epic dark fantasy. So they're not your young author. There's no kind of coming of age story in them. So they're quite dark in places. They deal with quite difficult topics. So there's kind of alcoholism in there. There's depression. There's a lot of different aspects to them, as well as the typical kind of fantasy type that you get within fantasy novels.
I love that. And did you notice the minute you said that these are really dark, both me and Jane are like, yes, we're here for this. Yeah, I think for us, the darker, the better. And actually, we've got a special treat for all of our audience out there. Damien shared with us his trailer for the book, so we're going to play that now, and I think you guys are going to be impressed. I love that. I like that, a coming of pain story. Well said, Rebekah. Well said. I like that. But we do. We tend, I can talk really. We tend to lean towards the darker things, I think.
I think so. For me personally, writing was always a way to deal with some of the issues and things in the past. It's a good escapism and way to process that. That's by putting the characters through it, basically, rather than me having to man up and deal with it myself.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And you've got to throw your characters into the maelstrom. You've got to, really make them grow through the pain and the strife. I think that that's what makes a book series really interesting, is watching that character, you know, not always win. Sometimes they fall down, but they get back up, they try again, they learn from what happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way too, I think, and Jane, we've talked about this before, it's catharsis. Sometimes we take our aggression out on characters, and it's helpful for us as the author to be able to exercise the demons, so to speak.
You know, I was sitting, I mean, this week I was sitting here writing the next scene. I'm like, okay, what kind of crap can I throw at my characters now? what kind of devious, awful things that, you know, do they have to encounter to get through?
Now, I don't know if you can see it or not, but we've got Damien saying hello from a very proud father.
He stayed up late just to dial into this lesson.
That's heartwarming. I love that. I love that. I love when parents show support for their children, especially when it's the adult children too, because the little ones, they always need that pat on the head. But you know what? The adults do too. Yeah, we need to hear that we're doing good.
It's always nice. My dad every now and then will pop in too. So
now, has he read all of your books?
He's got them all. He's not much of a reader, to be honest, but he's got them. So that's a start. He's one of the first purchases. So.
Oh, I love that. They'll get around to it eventually. I was joking with my oldest daughter. So I've got a teenager, and then I've got also littles. And I was joking with my daughter this week. She's got a boyfriend who's an artist. And you know how artists are, just like creatives, like with writing, we do something, we make something, we want everyone to see it, we want everyone to appreciate it. And over the years, I've even written a book series specifically towards teenagers, and my daughter has never read it. And she was sitting there talking to me about, I know I always have to tell him he's doing good, talking about her boyfriend, and everything he paints is wonderful, and I love it. And I'm like, that's right. That's payback for all the times you never appreciated the books I wrote. And she's like, damn it, Mom, you're right.
It's very close to you, isn't it, though? Especially when you're doing a work in progress where they read the same chapter like 6 times, where you've tweaked it and re-edited it. And it's like, I've now written this bit, try this.
Yeah.
Yep. And God bless the ones that do, that really sit through it. I know we've talked about beta readers in the past, and the ones that we trust, and why they're so important, because you do need that reader feedback. And sometimes you do need that reader that's going to go, you didn't do this right. Fix it.
Yep.
There is. So there's a guy that my 4th book's going through beta reading at the moment ahead of the publication in August. And there's one guy that I always go to because he just will not pull his punches. If there's something he doesn't think's right in there, he will tell you. And he really focuses on the details. There's one part that I referenced the wrong type of stone at one point to me. I hadn't even registered it. It was a cobblestone. I selected a type of granite or something, and he's like, that wouldn't work. That is too soft. And he literally gave me this whole explanation of why I was wrong, which is exactly what you want.
Yes. That tough love that you're gonna get it right, because it's gonna be right. I would rather hear it from a beta reader than get it in a public review down the line.
Right.
Exactly.
And I have gotten questions from my beta readers, Katie and Rebekah. So, you know, it helps. It helps.
It does.
I had a new one on the last series I wrote, because she hadn't had any introduction to any of my Ryan Chronicles books. So she didn't know the characters. And I wanted somebody who didn't know the characters, because I was introducing these people in the book, and I wanted to make sure it was properly introduced so that they wouldn't be completely lost. And I'm like, I got to have somebody who hasn't read my other series to do this. So, you know, that was tough to find, you know, of the authors that I trust. So, but she did a wonderful job. So,
and the beta readers too, they, just like you said with the stones, they make you go back and do your research.
Yes.
And we've harped on this before, that if you're not doing your research and you're not getting the details right, it's going to come out. And again, you'd rather hear it from your beta reader than from a public reviewer later.
Yes.
Jane, you deserve everything I throw at you, says Rebekah. You killed that entire family right after I met them.
Well, I had a bad day at work. I'm sorry.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we exercise our demons through writing, and how it does actually help us kind of work through problems. It's kind of a therapy in a way, where, you know, if we can exercise the anger and the angst and the aggression out on the page, we're actually a lot calmer and less likely to do that in person.
So what things have you worked through in your writing, Damien?
So for me personally, when I was kind of early teens, so 17, 18 years old, my home family life fell apart, and I ended up kind of surfing on people's sofas and staying with different friends for a while. And I ended up in a squat basically for a year or so, and just, yeah, ended up very depressed, ended up drinking quite heavily during that period, and just ended up in a really bad place. And I pushed away most of my friends and family and shut myself off from everyone. And it was quite a dark period in my life. And I had one friend that was in London who said to me at the time, basically, to try writing down my thoughts to make sense of everything that I was going through and the way that I'd been with my mother and everything that's happened there. And I just couldn't do it. It was just too hard for me to get out, basically. I just couldn't do it physically, putting me in that position. And that's when I then invented my first character. So he's a character that appears in the third book, basically. Mm-hmm. And I invented him and put him through some of the stuff I was going through. So he dealt with drinking too much, he dealt with losing his family, he dealt with kind of lots of those different things. And that was what enabled me to overcome that and then be able to process that and move past it. I couldn't do it. I was completely blocked and stuck well and really into that. My character got through it, and by seeing how he did it gave me that path to follow. And then there's other things I've done through some kind of breakups that have gone in there. I guess the typical one that almost everyone must have done it at some point, and the hardships that go through with that, and just general depression and anxiety. So my moods have fluctuated over the years, and it tends to be when I'm feeling more down, I'm more able to be creative and write more so than when I'm actually happy. So it's a mixed blessing. When I'm feeling really happy, my writing tends to go a bit quiet. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. You are able to write when you're feeling the drama more. I think a lot of creatives, they really sit just above the surface of all the emotions, and being able to tap into them is the skill that gives us the ability to write this and to make other people feel it through reading our stories.
Right. And bringing, you know, some of the, you know, realities of life into your fiction. It's tough. It's tough to live it, you know, through the page again. So, but it's a, as you say, a way to work through it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and Jane, when you're having a bad day, instead of killing your coworkers, you just kill a few people on the page, and all is well.
Yes, I can go back and smile.
And using the romantic drama. I mean, come on, we all understand romantic drama, and I think people eat that stuff up. They love the problems that happen that break people up or bring people together.
I think it's because we can all relate to that. It's something that most people go through at some point in their life. It's
yeah, exactly. And that, again, it makes people connect more with your stories. So now, how long have you been working on these books? Because you're up to, what was it, book 5?
Book 4 is coming out at the end of August, so that will be Lucian's Voyage. And then I've started work on a 5th one, but that's very, very early kind of work in progress. We're only about 2,000-3,000 words into that one, so it's kind of at a high concept and researching stage. But I started writing, oh blimey, probably back in 2008. So weirdly, the 3rd book in the series, A Winter's Child, is the first book that I wrote. So I wrote it in, I'm dyslexic as well, so when I wrote it, it was almost unreadable, to be honest. I wrote it purely for me, and I had friends who helped me edit it and go through that process, but it wasn't at the point that it was ready for people to read. But creating that book sparked up the world of Oakenfall and Valadvar, and I wrote that initial book, and then I wrote a couple of other short stories just for myself, my own enjoyment, and then I published Dragon's Blight in 2013, and that was kind of the first successful book. And off the back of that, I've then created the Oakenfall Chronicles series. So it's been a period of
About how long does it take you to write each book? Because you said that you're dyslexic, so that's going to make the writing part of it probably. Actually, no, that shouldn't make the writing part of it. It should make the editing part of it harder. But the words spewing get the story from the brain to the page. That should be fairly quick in comparison.
It is. That part's relatively quick once I sit down to do it. So I know some authors can kind of bring out 4 or 5 books a year. That's not something that I can do, because I don't write stories with a particular plan in mind. I have the characters, and they almost, I say, it's like having a world inside my mind. The characters just live there and they're doing their own thing, and I need to wait for them to do something. And then once that story starts happening and there's a journey for them going on, I just go with them on that. So I tend to write one about every 2 years, but that seems to be speeding up recently. So the 4th book I started last year. It's coming out this August, so I expect the 5th one to come out sometime next year.
Yeah, it sounds like you're more pantser than plotter, if I'm correct, right?
Definitely, yeah, I am. I definitely go on a journey with them. I have a rough idea where they're going, but yeah, the characters normally end up, whatever my plan is, they will go somewhere completely different. So I gave up on that.
Yep, that's the way it works. We can try. It's just like with children. We can try and do the right thing and get them where they're supposed to go. But they will have us veering left and right, and just, you never know where you're going to end up.
Right.
But that's part of the fun. And I think for a lot of us pantser authors, that's what keeps it interesting while we're writing, is we're experiencing everything as through the eyes of the character. It's fresh, it's new. We don't know what's going to happen when they turn that corner.
You have an idea of where you want them to end.
But are you right or are you wrong? There's the question. You still don't know.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm more of a pantser too. So
all right, we got a question from Rebekah here, and she says, what or who is your favorite character from the books that you've created?
So for me, it's Fintan Flynn. So he's an elf from the Alienage Isle. He's quite delicate and soft and gentle, but he then gets kind of dragged along with Darcy in Dragon's Bite on the adventure that he goes on. And he's reluctant to do it, and he's quite shy and bashful. And it's that kind of being kind of shy and not wanting to put himself forward, but being the centre of attention, and how he deals with that is what I think makes him quite endearing. And I've had a couple of feedback from fans that him and Erin seem to be the fans' favourite character as well. So it's there was a request that he makes a comeback in the 4th book. So
nice.
Oh, I love that, especially when fans tell you that they have a particular character that's a favorite. And that you have to bring back. You have to find new ways to include them in the story, even if their original storyline is done.
You have to bring them back. I had the beta readers that are reading it at the moment, when they haven't got too far into it yet, but they're like, if you kill off Fintan in this book, we're finding you. So
that's some passionate readers. I love that.
Yeah, I'd be in trouble.
You're already in trouble, Jane. You're already in trouble.
I have a morbid sense of writing, I guess.
Yeah, she'll send me a book to beta read, and she's like, so let me know when you're done. It's going to be interesting at the end, and that means somebody's going to die that I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Melanie says she threatens me regularly. Yeah, I think when the first series I wrote, book 3 was Pandora's Box. Mm-hmm. And I made a decision to kill off of a specific character that I knew was gonna hurt. Mm-hmm. And I've had readers really, really lash out at me for that one. And there was a purpose to it. I needed that character to die because that death motivates another character through the rest of the series. Mm-hmm. And so it had to hurt. Mm-hmm. And eventually they forgive me after they finish the series, but I can always tell once they've hit book 3, they're like, I'm never reading your books again. I hate you. Why did you do that? Melanie says, I wanted to kill her and throw things. I've gotten a lot nicer in my old age. I don't kill as much as I used to, but it still hurts just as much when I kill them.
Yeah.
Have you ever, when you've been writing, had a character die that you weren't expecting to? So I've had that in one of mine. I was writing, and then the next thing I knew they were dead, and I almost had to step out and people my head. What happened?
What happened? And then you burst out crying because it's like you didn't expect it. Yes.
Or how about a character you have to bring back from the dead? because the story, the character you have to bring back from the dead, because you planned for them to die, and by the time you got to the end of the story, nope, that would not work. I can't kill them. They have to live. And then you have to rewrite parts of the story so that that thread is erased.
No, I just, once it happened, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do with this? And I'm like, oh, well, that would be an interesting twist now that he's gone. So yeah.
We've got another question for Rebekah. Damien, how many of your characters do you kill?
So there's a couple, there's a few. It's not kind of your Game of Thrones where thousands of people die. There's a few that die, but there's generally a reason for it, or something happens that causes it. So it's a rarity in the journey, but they do happen sporadically throughout. So I'm kind of answering that without answering it, so I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, no spoilers. I did like that in Game of Thrones specifically, there was that element of you never knew if any character was truly safe or not. And that, I think, worked very well for the author to consistently create intrigue, because it didn't matter if character was good or bad, they could die equally. It didn't matter if they were working for, the righteous reasons, or if they were working for their own selfishness, they could die. Little kids, older, adults, it didn't matter. Everyone's head was on the chopping block at any point in time. And it's that constant state of, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And then, of course, you never finished writing the damn books.
Yes. Well, I mean, the Divergent series ended in a surprise.
Oh, I was so mad at that one. I didn't like that one.
I was like, I gave the author props for doing that, because that took a lot of guts to do. And as you thought about it, it really was the only way to end that.
No.
I know.
No. But we can have our difference of opinion. Yes. I was so mad. I was so mad when I got to that. Nope.
I was a little upset. But I'm like, okay, well, what could have happened differently? And would that have ruined the story?
I think she could have worked it around a little better. I think she could.
Sorry if the dog starts barking. He's running back and forth between the two doors.
Are you puppy sitting again?
Well, Billy and Steph are up here. My son's up here, but he's not joining us because he's with his girlfriend.
Oh, I see how it is.
Yes, he's in the other room.
All right, we got another question from the audience. Jenna says, ever think about killing a character and then change your mind and kill someone off instead?
So I haven't. As I say, I tend to go on the journey with them, and I almost see myself as just recording what's happened. I'm not the writer that's creating the story. I'm just documenting what goes on in Oakenfall. So if someone's going to die, then that's what happened. I just record it. As you said before, it can sometimes be a real pain for the story. So I had a plan where I was going, and then the character that was going to be going on that journey
is no longer
that takes it. So it's like, great, I now need to figure out how we get there now. So you then have to switch to someone else, or to find a different route to where you're planning to go to see what happens. No, I don't personally, if someone dies, I don't change it. I just go with it.
I haven't done that. I haven't killed anyone else off instead. So that I have changed my mind and not killed something. I'll say something because my co-author said absolutely not.
I have a rule. So you're not killing them just to watch them die. I dig it. That's what Rebekah says.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure that works, to be honest, but
we're not Game of Thronesing it. We're not just going to off everyone just for the shock effect. Now, you sent us a sample, an audio sample. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we share it?
Sure. So I've been working with a guy called Alan Churton, who's done the audiobook. So we're working through bringing all of the books to have audible versions of them and audiobooks. So some people love the books and are able to read them. Other people, reading isn't their forte. And they said, well, can we get the movie? It's like, I'd love to. I would love to have the movie, but that's not realistic right now. We found that the audiobook's a good way of doing that, to still get the story to people that don't want to read. And Alan's done an amazing job. He's really added a great level of detail to the characters and the way he voices them, and he brings an extra level of realism to the stories. I've listened to them back and I really enjoy them myself. I enjoy his presentation, and yeah, I can't praise him enough, to be honest. He's a really talented narrator. So we've got the first Dragon's Bite is currently out. A Tailor's Son is being worked on at the moment, in the hopes that will be out again sometime August, and then we'll continue working through the series to bring them all to Audible.
All right, well, let's jump right into it and let's listen to the sample.
It had then become another war front for Oakenfall because the elves living there refused to allow the Hansen family to plunder its resources. These two islands were only a few miles out to sea and could have posed a real threat to Oakenfall, but they were held in check by the intervening waters. It was more a war of words, with no side actively seeking conflict. However, this could not be said for the third and perhaps most fierce enemy of Oakenfall's peace. Towards the western edge of northern Niska stood the northern mountains and western reaches, a place of poor soil, hard stone, and even hardier people. Niska as a continent was home to both civilized modern humans and nomadic barbarian tribes. One of these tribes had become known as the Poles because of their unique pole axes made from the abundant black iron in the mountains. Because they remained in small tribes and were habitually battling each other, the barbarians of Niska used to present little more than an inconvenience, stealing from the odd trade caravan or pillaging a homestead. That was until around 10 years ago, when something changed. The Poles began to grow in numbers, and before the Hansens truly understood the threat facing them, they had lost the city of Northholm. Northholm had once been part of the Hansen kingdom and sat in the mouth of a natural harbour at the very northern tip of Niska. It had fallen to barbarian rule and now stood as a constant source of outrage to the royal court. The occupied city stood behind what was the most volatile battlefront, which had been held at a stalemate for years. The war to keep the Poles at bay had lasted for almost a decade. The line drawn on the map in the Hansen Castle's war room, marking the battle lines, barely moved an inch per season back or forth over the small town of Briars Hill, a trek of only some days north of Oakenfall. To some hearing this, it seemed like all the north was in turmoil, but that was not true, and even within the chaos, pockets of peace were to be found. On the border between northern Niska and the free states of middle Niska were the Ashmore Mountains, whose rocky peaks hid a magnitude of tunnels that were home to several small collectives of dwarfs. The largest of these was the Goldhorn Kingdom, that stretched for miles throughout the mountains. The peace they enjoyed was largely due to the fact that the dwarves had shut their mammoth gates and sealed themselves off from the topside world at the end of the Great War, and opened them just rarely for trade. Adjacent to the snow-capped Ashmore Mountains and sitting between Handsome Kingdom and the scorched lands was the small and peaceful low-lying countryside known as the Tower Plains. Its views to the horizon were barely broken by the sight of a tree or bush. However, it had one shadow that was cast against the sky for miles, a magnificent tower. The tower was home to the magic-wielding mages of Niska. Magic was dangerous, and those blessed, or cursed with it, scared those without it. Although mages had been vital in the defeat of the dragons during the so-called peace that followed the Great War, to avoid the fear and talk of witch hunters, the mages had established their own place of learning, away from cultivated lands. The mages' tower looked out over the plains of the north, and they had the best view of the mysterious scorched lands. Those ash cloud-covered lands that had been the front for the Great War were used by parents for scaring their children, and secretly still scared the parents in their own hearts. Few alive had seen the battles, but tales of the burnt bodies of thousands of men, the lost cities and the charred forests that fell for the freedom of man, haunted the dreams of many. It had been such an event in the world that it changed the very calendar that the civilized races used for tracking the years. Tonight was not just an anniversary, it was the turning of a century. This night marked 100 AB, the first century of freedom. And this is where our story starts, just beneath the fireworks. Watching from a white stone balcony in the noble district of Oakenfall, a lone figure stood.
Nice.
Okay, I liked that. That was really good. And he's got a great voice.
Yes,
Oh, what a
he
great
really does.
narrator.
Yeah, I do love him as a narrator. When you're auditioning different narrators, as soon as I heard him, I kind of turned to my girlfriend. It's like, I found the narrator. It's like, I don't care. Like, this is the one we're going with, because he's just, He it reminded me almost just kind of sitting on your granddad's knee and just having a book read to you. It's that kind of childhood glee that comes into you.
Oh, there we go. Darian says, Damien, I'm not a great reader, but when your books come out on Audible, I'll be able to enjoy your stories. Love, Dad.
Aw, yes.
Oh,
It's awesome.
I love that. I love that. That is a good papa there. That is a very good father.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Again, back to that whole pat on the head. Good job. We all need it. We all need it. I love
it's
that.
awesome listening to the reviews or the book review or the book readings of your narrator when you're reviewing it and making sure it's correct. It's really humbling to realize you were the one who wrote those words, but they made them come to life. But
how many moments did you have where you were like, oh my God, I wrote that?
Yep.
You definitely get you, and it's when he voices it, and he voices one of the characters in there, Granny, who is kind of the caregiver to Darcy. And when he just started giving her the voice and character, she came alive, and it was literally like he'd reached into my head and pulled out what she sounded like, and it's incredible how he managed to do that from just what was written down. And that was the pitch that he gave that actually made me fall in love with Alan's work and decide to work with him, because he'd managed to, as I say, pour out the character from my mind in the book that just was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. So you went with Audible for your distribution on this one.
I did,
now,
yeah.
Did you produce all the books yourselves, or did you go through a small press?
So originally I went for a small press. So Dragonflight was originally published for a small press, and that was it did relatively well, but it didn't earn enough for them to want to keep doing it. So we ended that relationship back in about 2015, 2016, I guess, after a couple of years of working with them, and I then got the rights back to them myself. So this time around, I'm just doing them all myself. So we've set up Black Flag, and we're doing them all ourselves, which comes with a lot of benefits and also a lot of additional risks and pitfalls to look out for.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that plenty of times, that as an independent author, you are now not just the writer, you are the project manager, and you have to control all of the production elements of your book, from your editing to your cover art, to where you're going to distribute, to what forms you're going to distribute in, to your pricing. It's a lot of work, and it's, for the uninitiated, it's very overwhelming that first time you put a book out, because there's so much that you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the marketing side is where I'm lacking, but the project management side for everything else, my day job is in project management. I'm a business analyst. I've been a project manager, so juggling that piece does not bother me. It's like, okay, how do I get in front of people now?
That's what I was about to say. Is when you release that book, you don't realize that you then have to learn how to market something, how to engage with things like this, and different marketing adverts and radio reviews, and how do you even do any of that? You kind of release the book and expect people to find it, but that obviously doesn't work.
Only it were that simple. If only.
Let's just wave our little magic wand and
a little post, hey guys, it's live, and then that's it. No, God, no.
It's a long, drawn out, painful process.
So speaking of painful processes, let's talk about how you learned and worked through all of your books. What did you use the small press as kind of your guidelines on what to do, or did you research everything?
A lot of it was researching and networking. So the small press pretty much did everything for me. So they arranged, I had book signings and things that I went to. So I would literally show up, bring a pen with me, sit there, sign the books, and that's all I had to do. So I didn't have to do any of it. When that ended, it was like, okay, so I've got the manuscript back now. What do I do with it? So I had to, as you say, research. I reached out to Facebook groups, and that's where the kind of the pitfalls come in. So there's lots of people. The minute I start, I've got this manuscript, what do I do? There's almost 100 emails you get a day. We can publish it for you, or we charge us this, or we cost this. And it's like, well, that's the right thing to do. Do I just pay them to do that? Or and luckily for me personally at the time, I didn't have the money to pay someone to do it, or I may have fallen down that pitfall of paying a fantasy publisher and going that route. But I was quite fortunate that I didn't have the money, so I then kept digging to find a different way, and realised you got things like KDP that you can use, and Barnes and Noble, and different ways to do that yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, there's so many avenues out there. Do you use Draft to Digital or Publish Drive? Smashwords, I think, is the other big aggregator.
It is. A Draft to Digital I've used. Obviously, KDP is a big one. So I try not spreading it too thinly at the moment, just because trying to think of the advertisement and the marketing while still working a full-time day job can be challenging. So I want to keep it kind of one or two places and focus all of my effort on advertising that rather than spreading thinly and marketing more broadly. So
with that in mind, then, if you're using KDP, did you enroll in Unlimited?
I did make the choice to do that. So, and that was a difficult choice to make, because again, when you're trying to research, it's do we do Unlimited, don't we? You get so much mixed feedback, with some people saying no, don't do it, it's the worst thing ever, and other people saying no, do it, it's the best way to get page read and earn profit that way. So it really is quite difficult to know what to do.
And honestly, it's really dependent on the author and their book, because some genres do work better in Kindle Unlimited. I think romance, we've talked about before, tends to do extremely well in Kindle Unlimited. Young adult tends to do really well in Kindle Unlimited. But sci-fi and sometimes the epic fantasies, they tend to do better wider, because you've got the people who iBooks and Kobo, different marketplaces. I know Kobo is a lot bigger in Europe, probably in the UK as well. And iBooks, they tend to be across all the different markets. So if you just do Kindle Unlimited, you have to make the choice. Do I limit myself to only Amazon readers, or do I go wide? What's going to be my audience? And the beauty of having Kindle Unlimited is it's only a 90-day commitment. You can take it out if it doesn't work, but then, just like you said, you've got to focus some more marketing on the wider aspects. Now, the beautiful thing with Draft to Digital is they provide you that single link page, which that is one of the best resources for a lot of authors who are marketing wide, is to get people to that landing page that has all of the different ways you can buy it. And I just learned this myself, even though it's been 2 years since they implemented it. Learn something new every day. You can now add your audiobooks to that same book links page. So you can have your ebooks listed and your audiobooks listed on that single link. And that makes, again, the marketing a little bit easier to work with.
Yeah, I use Story Origin for my, one link.
Can't say enough good about them.
Yes, yeah, and they've added audiobooks. I haven't figured that stuff out yet, but I'm too busy writing right now.
Now, let's bring that up. Have you utilized the networking sites that are meant to help build your newsletters? Because Story Origin, Prolific Works, Booksprout, I think, is the other one. They're all basically the same type of service with different payment levels for membership, but they enable you to get in with other authors and do newsletter swaps and share promos and things like that.
So I haven't used a website like that. And I found people on kind of the Facebook groups who they kind of act as a marketing manager, I guess. So we've mentioned Courtney before and the newsletter that she does. So that's kind of one of the main routes that I go through. I work quite closely with Courtney in getting to signing up to the subscriber list that she does and things like that. I find those really helpful because they're quite focused on the particular topic. So I keep a constant eye out for any epic fantasy or or anything like that, newsletter builders, and use those. I must admit, I'm not the best at doing the newsletters. I don't tend to use them particularly for marketing. They're more for just communicating with the fans and things like that, rather than I'm not particularly efficient, so we say, in that marketing side of things. I'm aware of that. It's something I do need to get better at.
You know, follow Courtney's advice. We absolutely love Courtney, and you'll find her every month on Joe's channel, Go Indie Now. When we do the monthly news, she also does monthly little marketing tidbits, and every single time, and I've been in the business for a long time, I still learn new things by listening to Courtney's advice. She is brilliant. She knows what she's doing, and she is an excellent resource, especially in your genre for marketing. She knows that area well.
She really does, and she's one of the first connections I made kind of when I started doing this myself. I was very fortunate, I think, to kind of stumble across her quite early, and I've made a lot of other authors that have sent me their work to read and review. I kind of pointed them towards Courtney to help that side of things, because the services she offers really do make a big difference to the success you have.
Yeah, and the other thing that Courtney does too is her prices are reasonable. There's a lot of people that will try and sell you all kinds of marketing, and their prices are ridiculous. And an indie author who's already spent the money for the cover, already spent the money for the editing, already spent the money for the formatting, and is trying to do ads, there's not a lot of money left over. And indie authors sometimes end up pricing themselves out of the market because of that. But Courtney's prices, especially her newsletter builders, they are well within a price range we can afford. They do have results. They're worth it. So I always recommend her as well. She's one of my go-to sources when I have marketing questions too.
Cool.
Before we stop on that, Jane, I know you know the name, the guy who runs the Amazon ads.
You just had Brian Cohen.
Yes.
Yes. To ask that.
So another resource that I do tell people to go towards, and he runs it, I think, 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And it is a free how to do Amazon ads class, and it lasts an entire week. And it's like an actual class. You have a reading assignment, you have homework, you have accountability by posting in the groups what you're doing, and you can show your results. And him and his the members of the team that he's working with will tend to help you to tweak things a little better. You can get feedback, and it's free.
And you can do it multiple times.
Yes.
I bought into the ads group, so I can take, you know, the series stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, for indie authors on a budget, the free thing, it gives you knowledge to work them and have them work for you.
Yeah, and he runs it a few times a year. So if you miss, I think he's actually running it right now.
Right. Yeah.
If you miss like the one that's happening now, there'll probably be another one in October. So by going and finding him and just liking his page, you'll get the update, and he sends out the information well in advance to sign up, and it's free, 100% free. No trickery. And that's a lot of, you don't find that anymore. Everybody's got a system and they want to sell it to you.
Yeah.
And it costs a crazy amount of money or crazy amount of commitment. This is something he does. He's already successful in everything else. This is something he does for the community. And that, I mean, that right there makes it worthwhile. You've got somebody who is really trying to help the community. And that's what's made indie authors kind of, you know, wash away the stigma we used to have. I mean, it used to be the scarlet letter to call yourself an indie author. And over the years, we've gotten better. We've gotten smarter. We've learned how to do what needs to be done. And because of that, the quality of our books have gotten better. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of scams out there, and authors do fall prey to them. But it's part of the community's kind of, it's kind of our mission statement to help those who are new and make sure that they're not going to fall prey to it, and spread the word about the real stuff that does help.
And that's one of the biggest things to watch out for, I guess, in some of the Facebook groups and things. Because the first thing I did is reach out and kind of do kind of book reviews or readers and try and find different groups to go to. And it's finding out the right groups to go into. Because as I say, as soon as you put a question on there, you will get message after message and private message with people trying to sell you these solutions, or even asking for like copies of your manuscript to read it and things like that, to then run off of it. There's so many things to watch out for. It's important to make sure you make the right connections.
Yes. Absolutely. And there it is. Anita says the Brian Cohen 5-day ad challenge, and it is definitely worth it.
Yeah.
It will give you an education for sure. I learned so many things from that. And again, I've been in this business for a long time, and I'm still learning new things every day. You will never stop learning. You will never stop improving. That's part of what makes being an indie great, is we can constantly, bring ourselves up to a new level.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why, I think that's why remembering as well, when you get feedback from fans and things as well, it's, as an author, if you get a slightly negative review or a lower star review, they can be quite crippling or painful. But it's as you say, we're constantly learning and evolving and developing. So yes, your first book may be a 4-star book or a 3-star book, but your second book may be a 4-star and your third will be a 5-star. It's that accepting that the feedback you get isn't necessarily bad. It's just something for you to build on and develop on as you progress through your writing career.
Oh, absolutely. And if you can look at the reviews and find a nugget of truth in there to help you improve, that's wonderful. There's a lot of people that are just trolls, and we have to learn to ignore the trolls. And we also have to remember that not every book is for everybody. Mm-hmm. And if you go look up your favorite book on Amazon or Goodreads, guaranteed somebody is going to hate the book that you absolutely love. And so, you kind of keep that in your brain. And anytime you get negative about a negative review that comes in, go do that. Go look at your favorite book and see people say negative things about stuff you love too.
Right.
It helps to kind of, dampen it a little bit. And then if you go back and read and you say, you know what, they did make, a good point here. I should do this. Then in your next book, do that. Mm-hmm. And that's how we improve. But I want to kind of touch on this because you'd mentioned this before we even started the show about some of the pitfalls that authors can fall prey to. Specifically, editors that maybe aren't as good as they should be, or charging crazy editing rates, or marketing services that sell you a bunch of stuff you don't need. What have you run into in your experience?
So I guess the first one's, as you say, the editor. So being dyslexic, I do rely quite heavily on my editor to find where I've used the wrong word or wrong spelling, or the letters are completely in the wrong order from what they were meant to be in my head. So the first book I'd done, I paid for an editor to review it. They took probably about 2 months to go through and do it. They handed it back to me. And even as I was reading it, I'm like, well, that's wrong and that's wrong. And then 10 pages in, it's like there's 6 or 7 mistakes within this bit that potentially they weren't even there when I sent it to them. So they've introduced the wrong words, and it was only by me rereading it that I captured it. So it's finding that right editor, and then not just necessarily having one. So like we discussed earlier, I've got an editor who goes through and edits it. They do several iterations of it and a proofread, and then you go off to beta readers who then make sure, because the editors are still human, they will still miss things, or they can't see the wood for the trees, as the expression. So it's always worth having that additional pair of eyes, or that kind of 4-eye principle to check to make sure there's no mistakes in them.
Absolutely. And I've talked about this before. I did a workshop for the local library recently, and I put the videos up on my YouTube channel so that people can watch them if they want to. One of them was on self-editing, and what the importance of self-editing is for the author. It's not about getting it perfect. It's about making it as clean as possible. So when you send it to your editor, they can find the right mistakes, because if you have nothing but mistakes, you're going to miss a lot.
Right.
So if an editor is looking for specific things, and I do editing as part of the freelance work that I do, if there are too many mistakes on the page, I'm human. I'm going to miss some of them because I've been so focused on getting everything else. And that means multiple passes in order to get it clean. That's more time. That's more that you end up having to pay to your editor to do that really deep dive into your story. So by going through and self-editing, or having a proofreader that can help you figure it out and get it cleaned up before you send it to the editor, you're going to end up getting back a lot cleaner of a manuscript, because now the editor can really focus on the important bits. And then also, there are different kinds of editors. You have an editor that, for developmental, they're going to focus on story, not necessarily your grammar and punctuation. They're going to focus on the plot. They're going to focus on the characters. They're going to focus on the setting, the realism, the research, how you're presenting it. Does it read cleanly? Then you've got your copy editors. They're the ones that are going to focus on the punctuation, the grammar, and the sentence structure. So you've also got to figure out which editor you need and use them appropriately.
Yeah, and it's rough when you find an editor that you absolutely love and she decides to go out of business.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yes, and finding another editor that has of the same caliber and the same wavelength, because the wavelength is really important.
Yeah, they've got to get your story too.
Yeah.
I've had an academic editor going through my fiction work, and I can tell now that I'm, been in the business for a while, I can tell now going back through it going, oh yeah, that technically would be correct, but doesn't sound right now. Right. So there's different editors for different applications. And Rebekah says, what's a crazy editor rate? I've seen a lot of super high editing rates. And I've seen editors, they break things down depending on what kind of edit you're looking for. Right. Because again, they're looking for different focuses. So I usually tell people to look up editing rates online. There are, I think there's a couple of different societies for editors that usually put, here's what the standard is. Yeah. Now, are you always going to find somebody who goes by the standard? Maybe. If you find somebody lower, do your research, find out who they've edited, find out who they've worked with, and see if their low rate is just them trying to be as competitive as possible. And if they are, great. Sometimes you get what you pay for. And a low editing rate could be a sign of an editor that's not really ready to be editing at the level that you need. Yeah. Exactly. Also, because you're in a different country, British English and American English are two different Englishes with different rules on things too.
And that was one of the challenges I particularly had, because I wanted my book to have a wide reach. So the editor that I've got is an American editor, to take out some of the localized English way of wording and things like that, to make it a broader reach. But that does pose its own challenges, as you say, because there's things that the editor will come back with and say, well, it's this. I'm like, well, that isn't how I would do it. And then you have that kind of back and forth to understand where those rules are different.
And it's also good to have a relationship with your editor, to be able to, if they leave notes through track changes, they leave notes for you, to be able to go, hey, let's talk about this. What does this mean? Why were you suggesting this? This is what I was going for. In dialogue, as an example, dialogue breaks every rule. So you don't edit dialogue the same way you edit narration. And if an editor is trying to stick to the hardcore rules with the dialogue, that's going to be something you need to talk about, because that's a different type of writing and it doesn't follow the standard format, because it's trying to convey how somebody speaks, and we don't speak proper English. Right. We don't. Sorry. Margaret's late to the party, but she's here. Rebekah says, I'm open to taking some editing work. I will be too after August.
Yeah, my husband just came in. He's been building a deck for the neighbor since 8 a.m. this morning.
Oh, good Lord.
He just came in. That's why I looked away. I was like, oh, okay.
All right. So we talked about editors. What other services have you run into?
So I had the video ad that we showed earlier on in this, the initial kind of creator artist I reached out to do a video for me. They gave me this video that had different clips in it and different content, different music tracks, and I put it out on different social media sites to bring in some interest. And I had someone message me, it's like, you realize that those images are copyrighted? And I trusted the editor or the artist that created them, and the content was actually all pirated. They'd gone off to different websites and grabbed these different things. I obviously had to quickly pull it down, delete it, get the money back, and then reach out to a different artist to create them. So it's that kind of thing, because obviously I don't want people to perceive that we're stealing other people's content and work. So it's very difficult to know who you're working with is legitimate.
That happens a lot with cover art as well, because if somebody goes to get cover art created, wherever that cover artist is sourcing the material, unless they're drawing it themselves, there's usually a license involved in that. And I know for me, when I work on cover art, I use Deposit Photos, and Deposit Photos license allows me to use the photo and to manipulate it to create something new, which I can then share. It doesn't allow the author getting that book cover to get the original photo and do with that as they please. And so I've had that conversation many times with authors where I'm like, you get the cover, I have to keep the source material, because unless you want to pay for the license yourself, you can't have it. I'm not legally allowed to give it to you. Right. And then there's also limits on each license. A standard license, I think, is 500,000 impressions. If you need more than that, and usually people recover their book before that happens anyways.
Yeah.
If you need more than that, the extended license is going to cost a different fee. And if the author wants to cover that, then they're either paying that cover artist for the extended license, or they're going in and buying the source material themselves and getting the license themselves. But they have to do that. There's legal issues behind it that have to be covered.
I guess I cheated with that. So as I said, I had a friend of mine actually sit down with pens and she hand drew all of my covers on a piece of paper, and then we used those paintings to get a digital artist to create the covers that we had, purely because you said the licenses and the pitfalls there were just too complex for me to spend the month needed to understand that. So I found a different way around it. But I would really suggest if you can't create your own, is to find someone, you say like yourself, Katie, who already has that knowledge and will provide that service to do it for you than trying to do it on your own, because it's just not worth the risk.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a cover artist use fonts that they didn't pay for.
Oh,
Yes. And I loved the font, and I was like, oh no. So it was quite expensive to get the font. And I was like, oh man. and then when I pointed it out, they're like, well, you're responsible for that. That's what she said to me. You're responsible for getting that. And I'm like, no.
Where does it say it in our contract?
Right.
Always have a contract too. I don't care how nice the person is. Contract protects both parties.
Yes,
but
exactly.
You're right. Font is one that people do not consider. If it's not an open source font, then you need to get the license to use that font in your book or on the cover. And I ran into that issue recently with another client. The cover artist is a friend of mine, and he made the cover. So I went to him and I was like, I need to know what the font is on the cover, because I want to do the interior formatting and make title pages and chapter titles match the font that you used. And he's like, oh, this isn't a free font. Okay, tell me what it is so I can go get it. And then that information goes on your copyright page. What you got licensed for, where it came from, who did what, always on the copyright page.
Cool.
Sorry, we're getting like, this is what we got to do now, being serious. But it is. This is your business. Your book is your business. And as an indie author, you are 100% responsible for your book. It doesn't just have your name on it. You are tied to every single part of it.
Yeah. And Rebekah Anita or Rebekah said, even if it's open source, get the license anyway so you can cover your ass.
Yep. And there's a lot of open source out there. There's a ton of fonts. You just have to do your research. And a lot of times there are font bundles out there that you can purchase that come with the licensing. And a lot of times fonts are not that expensive, and just going to the source, go to the creator of it and purchasing a license, it might be $10, might be $25, but it's worth it to cover your butt.
Yes.
Somebody's talking to you. I can see your eyes keep going up.
I'm like, wait more minutes.
All right.
Come in.
I think we have covered just about everything. This has been a super fast hour. My goodness.
It has.
I love when we get into like these good conversations.
Yes. That's very good.
Well, before we end up signing off, we do have to pay homage to our wonderful second sponsor, who is always in the chat, Mistress Rebekah Jonesy. Thank you so much for always being there for us and for helping us to get this show off the ground. And if you would like to follow Rebekah Jonesy and her work, definitely check her out on Facebook. She runs a group where she does live chats. I believe it's every Wednesday. One of these days I will actually make it. Wednesdays are always a weird day for me. But she reads. She's got live chats just to hang out with her. She's an awesome person. And her newest book just came out. And I need her to send me the cover for it because it's really, really cool. So you will be entertained.
Yes, you will be entertained. Woohoo!
And Jane, do we have any word on this lovely banner you sent me?
Well, Dragon Tempest is already out. Dragon Storm will be out in September, and Dragon Dawn is scheduled for December.
Wow. All right. Look at those covers.
I'm about 50% done with Dragon Storm. So, yes.
More to add to the TBR
I'm
pile.
one of those prolific writers that does the 4 to 5 to 6 books a year. So
Yeah.
I envy you being able to do that.
And I have a full-time job, so outside of writing.
I don't know how you do that. I don't. And I write
But you
fairly
gotta
quickly when I
focus and
write.
After work, it's like, okay, change focus, do this.
That's right. Exercise your demons, kill everyone that you didn't kill at work.
Yes, exactly. So, oh yes.
Oh, we got the audience fired up on the issues with the copyright on images and fonts. I think every one of us has run into that problem, and we've learned our lesson from being burned at least once.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, absolutely.
Unfortunately, it happens. But again, if we can educate other indie authors, if we can help, be a source of information, then they don't have to make the mistake and they get better.
Right.
So,
exactly.
We all get better as a result of that.
Exactly. And we can keep on creating. Well, Damien, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This has been a wonderful conversation. And again, your books look amazing.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me. And hopefully I'll get to pop back again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. You said that the fourth book, Lucian's Voyage, that one's supposed to come out later this year.
So it's coming out on the 31st of August, and that completes what I'm kind of nicknaming kind of the Rimwood saga. So there's a thread that goes across the first 3 books, and that 4th book concludes the whole collection of all 4 books. So it's the wrap up of the story that underlies all of them.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, we will have to get you back then when we come back in September to talk about this.
That sounds good.
All right. And for everyone out there, please visit his website and check out his books. And we will be back. I believe we have one more show before we go on our break. And it's not next week. It's going to be the week after. And then we're going to take the month of August off and do a little bit of restructuring and come back strong in September. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks with another author to introduce you to. And Damien, we're going to get you back in September to talk about your latest book.
Sounds good. I'll look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We will see you next time.